Bull Bros here. Hey, I want to do a real quick video on Joey Bosa and where he sits with the team. I know we keep talking about cap hits and how we're over the cap currently at this point, but I want to also just discuss Joey Bosa. He's one of my favorite players on the team, and you know where he fits, maybe where he doesn't fit in this team. And this is gonna be a controversial video. I understand that, but I really want to get that conversation out there. I know my brother probably gonna do another video on Khalil Mack, and then we have another dark horse person that we may potentially trade or move off before the season starts. So, guys, let's get into it. All right, folks. So, I want to talk about the positives about Joey Bosa rather than really focus on the negatives because I love Joey Bosa. I actually have a jersey of Joey Bosa. I think that's my color rush. Dark, I think royal blue jersey is Joey Bosa, and then I have a Derwin James jersey. So it's going to be interesting to see, how this plays out specifically with Joey Bosa and the Chargers. Again, we're $20 million over the cap. Now, why does it matter? Really, June 1 is when you start getting penalties, right? And that's when guaranteed money. I'm going to go through that a little bit with Joey Bosa specifically here. Now, before I begin, again, guys, if you could like this content, please consider liking and subscribing. It really does help out the channel. There's about 70% of the people that watch our videos actually are not subscribed. So please consider liking and subscribing. All right, so let's get into it, guys. Let me show you my let's start with the stats on Joey Bosa. I actually really kind of want to go through kind of his career breakdown, right? I mean, here's Joey. Kind of looks like John Matuzak. Let me know if you guys know who that is. He was an ex-Raider, but he was kind of a wild man. I was looking at him trying to find a photo of Matuzak and Joey Bosa next to each other. They look pretty similar. But let's go through the stats. So again, Joey is an interesting player, right? Rookie year, 10 sacks. Second year, 12 sacks. And then he was injured. 2018, 5 sacks. 2019, 11 sacks, 11 and a half sacks. 2020, 7.5 sacks, right? 21, 10 sacks. And then obviously last year was a bit of a disappointment, obviously because of his injuries and so on and so forth. So when you think about Joey Bosa as a player, I a lot of times really think he's one of those guys that kind of needs a system around him, or at least the ability to do this. And again, we all know this, guys, as Charger fans. He was double covered through a lot of this, right? His best seasons when we had someone like a Melvin Ingram on the other side. I believe Ingram was definitely on the 16th and 7th, 2016, 2017, maybe even 18. I can't remember exactly when we let Ingram go. But my point is, having someone like a Mac on the other side made him more productive. And that's going to go so frustrating about this entire season last year, specifically with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, is that we could have seen so much more production if both of them had stayed healthy, right? And the fact that Bosa, was injured for the entire season for the most part was just really frustrating. Interesting stat, though, if you look at the first two games with Mack and Bosa on the field, we had one of the best defenses in the league. I think we were giving up like 100, like under 100 yards of rushing per game. We did very well, and it was against the Raiders and the Chiefs, right? The Raiders had, fairly prolific offense last season. And then obviously the Chiefs are Super Bowl winners, right? So we see the benefit, right? We see the benefit of a Joey Bosa. All right, so let's get into some of the numbers, right? What does it look like? What's his contract? What about trading, releasing? How is that going to look like financially, right? So let me go into this real quick. This is Joey Bosa's contract specifically. Joey Bosa signed a 5-year, $135 million contract with Los Angeles Chargers. There's $35 million signing bonus. Boom. $102 million guaranteed, average base salary of $27 million in 2023. Woo! Again, boys, we're $20 million over the cap, right? $20 million already, right? And again, there's penalties, there's fines, there's things that occur to the team if you're not under that by June 1st. June 1st is when it really matters. That's when these conversations really matter. So we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but we're thinking a little bit ahead and where we're at this point. So, but again, signing bonus, absolutely fantastic, while carrying a cap hit of $31 million and a dead cap value of $38 million. The reason, and I'll break that down a little bit here on Sport Track, it's kind of interesting. So let's say we release Joey Bosa before June 1st, right? $38 million to dead cap. Done. We eat that money. It's done. There's no way we're releasing him. We cannot release him. It's not going to happen. Best option would be to trade him. Okay. I I think that makes some sense. We could talk a little bit about that. I have some ideas on where he could potentially go, but let's say we released him. I mean, it would just be horrible. My point in talking about this specifically, there's no chance we're going to release him after that because we would just take a $31 million hit. We're just going to pay him $31 million to go away. That's not going to happen, right? Again, there's a lot of value in Joey Bosa if he stays healthy, as we all know. But that's kind of where we're at. And again, let's say post June 1st trade, we do save 24 million. But there is an option either way. So the argument would be we are going to get a dead cap from this 7 million from 2024, which means the player's no longer on the team, but no matter what, we are still agreeing to pay him that much money, right? That's part of the guaranteed funds. So again, if we trade him, this is kind of where we sit. So what looks best here for you folks, right? You look at this and you say, okay, it's going to be a trade. And again, what would happen? Well, I think back on what we did for Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack had a bit of a down year. I mean, you go back to the stats of Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa only played really 4 games last season, right? But at the end of the day, he was prolific when he was in. He did fairly well. I mean, he's very good at setting the edge. He does a lot of the really good things that any player could do. Now, I could see a team like the Bears or maybe, the Falcons or teams that actually have a lot of money to spend to potentially go after someone like a Joey Bosa. Now, the argument would be, well, would you want to trade him pre-June 1st or June after June 1st? I think what'll probably happen, it'll be most likely post June 1st. I think he's going to be on our team no matter what up until the end. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have an edge rusher. Let's say you're a Falcons, you have your edge rushers, or the Bears, and you just did not get an edge rusher. You need somebody, and that coach says, "Hey, we need some veteran talent." Then a trade makes some sense, right? Again, the Chargers would eat some of this $7 million, obviously, off this dollars right here in dead cap. Again, you're going to be taking a $14 million hit, right? So there are benefits both ways. Now, I would just say this, right? What would we get out of a Joey Bosa? Well, think of what we did for Khalil Mack. We gave up a 2nd round pick. I question how much we would get off of a Joey Bosa off a trade, especially with this amount of money. I think there's probably more money that we could potentially get here off a trade. But again, it's going to be tough, right? Because who would want to accrue that with a veteran player? I think he's 27 years old. Let me just double check here. I'm pretty sure he's 27. And so, he's getting a little older, right? He's got his age, he's got his, like we're all getting older, right? And unfortunately, with Joey Bosa, it's catching up to him, right? That groin injury obviously took him out, for the season. And one of the things that I talked about a couple of times on our podcast last season was just think of how much better our team would have been. I promise you, we'd at least have 2 more wins if Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack were on the field the entire season, because it would completely dictate so differently how that team can play you offensively, right? You just cannot run free. You just can't do it. You'd have to account for Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack at every given moment, right? And so you would limit what that offense could potentially run, right? Look at what the Chiefs did. The video my brother did on the Chiefs offense breakdown was amazing. They run 4 outs all the time. They do that because they want to stack the numbers and have the ability to just flood the zones, right? And that's what they do, right? They just make it very difficult for that defense to stop what's happening on offense, right? But they also have vertical spreads. They do mesh. They do everything. They're not as predictable as someone like a Joe Lombardi, right? But again, when you have someone like a Joey Bosa, you would make that team, potentially the Chiefs, say, well, we can't run 4 out because we have, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack we have to contend with, right? So it could potentially limit what they can do, right? So again, there's a ton of value, but again, release is not going to happen. Trade could happen. I think it's a conversation that could happen. Again, it's a tough discussion, right? It's a tough discussion point. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think there's a chance that Bosa gets traded off? I think anything could happen specifically, but ask yourself this question. Would you trade him away for a 2nd round pick like we did for Khalil Mack? Or would you trade him away for even a 3rd round pick, maybe even 2 4th round picks? What about a 4th round pick this year and a 4th round pick next year? So these are the conversations I promise you are probably being had by Tom Telesco. I can't talk about them, but these are conversations that are happening behind closed doors, right? So it's something to sort of think about. I'm going to end on maybe some negative, and then I'm going to wrap up on some positive, right? This is what we call a positive sandwich, and uh, this is kind of an interesting little breakdown. I thought this was kind of cool because you could see all these different articles, right? And this is where I think Joey Bosa becomes a bit of a liability. Okay. Um, you know, Joey Bosa, Max Crosby's taking jabs at, Joey Bosa, the way he acted against, the Jackson, the wild card, rightfully so. Um, let's see, what was the other one? Yeah. And then I don't know if you saw that video about Joey Bosa getting heckled by an Eagles fan going to the Niners game. Obviously, he was cheering his brother on against, in that playoff game. And, again, Joey Bosa kind of, explained why he was so upset with the refs. I mean, there's a million articles on his frustration with the referees and everything, right? I think it was like a $60,000 fine is what he got. His helmet spike. This is interesting here, right, too. This is a great little article. And again, I don't want to go through all this, right? Doug Peterson says Joey Bosa's helmet throw penalty pushed him to go for it on the 2-point conversion in a critical moment. Guys, we lost that game. I don't want to blame it on Joey Bosa, but I'll tell you right now, there's two penalties that I always think about. Okay, the one where he was offsides, which arguably I don't think he was even offsides, but we had a sack, stop that drive. He's offsides, give him immediately. They get a first down and score a touchdown. Let's say that didn't happen. Well, the game would have been completely different. Secondarily, he gets upset because he's not getting a holding penalty and he throws his helmet. And guess what? It makes it easier for them to go for the 2-point conversion. So it's the difference of the game, guys, right? And again, so these are the conversations that are had behind closed doors right now. I promise you, Telesco's having this conversation with Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley's having this conversation with Joey Bosa. They are having conversations with their agents. They're having conversations with other teams. Who wants him? Who doesn't want him? I promise you, he's on the trading block. And I guarantee any team that says, "Hey, we want Joey Bosa," they're going to have a conversation because we've got to figure things out financially for this team, right? Because we still got rookies we got to sign. We do have a draft. We have to clear that cap space. Something has to happen, or we could renegotiate his contract, which I think is really the third option that could happen here. So let me just wrap up in that thought, right? I think what most likely will happen, again, we have a release. Don't think that's going to happen. A trade could happen, right? I think it depends on what we get, depends on what we're offered. Again, as you saw, there's a lot of money involved in that discussion, right? So the team we're trading either is going to pick up some of that or none of that, or however it's negotiated, right? That's Tom Telesco's job to get that done correctly and negotiate it properly. So he's going to have to show his negotiation skills at this moment. Secondarily, the other option would be they restructure his contract. To me, that's probably the best and most likely outcome. They could sit down and have a discussion around, pushing some of the cap money out, or, trying to do it for one more year at least and see what they can do, right? Because look, bottom line, if Joey Bosa really wants to be here, he's getting paid enough money. I mean, goodness gracious, he's got $35 million signing bonus, and 20 was it $27 million a year is what his actual contract is. I think it's 20. Yeah, crazy money, right? Base salary, his base salary, guys, is $24 million. Okay, so look, my point is they could sit down, they could renegotiate, they should move the money around, maybe extend it out to a 3-year contract, spread it out a little longer. He'll retire a Charger at 31 or 32. I think that's where the conversation becomes a little more interesting and probably a little more realistic for the Chargers, right? So you could just spread them out. Hey, here's another 4 years. Here's another 3 years. You can retire as a Charger and see what Justin Herbert can do for you. So look, guys, I know it's a disheartening conversation. We don't want to talk about players we really like and enjoy watching. And Joey Bosa is one of the OG, San Diego, holdouts, right? So, we don't want him to go anywhere, but the realistic conversation is such that the Chargers have to make some tough decisions, right? So we'll see how it plays out. And again, we've kind of, beaten this conversation, like a dead horse, right? $20 million over the cap at the end of the day. Things need to happen, right? So again, what do you guys think? trade, release, restructure. Definitely love to hear your opinion, your thoughts on what we're going to do with Joey Bosa. But and again, guys, as always, like and subscribe. See you guys in the next one.